Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we often hear about the butterfly effect, right? How one tiny action can just unleash this huge wave of consequences.
Yeah, and usually in a bad way. The story is always about some mistake that leads to disaster.
Exactly. But today we're looking at a story where the butterfly effect went the other way, a cascade of, well, of good.
It's an incredible story.
It is. We're looking at sources that connect, of all things, a Dutch diplomat's clever remark, a Japanese official completely ignoring his bosses, a terrifying train ride,
Across the frozen Soviet Union.
and a luxury ocean liner that somehow you can still go visit today near Tokyo.
It sounds like a thriller novel, but you're talking about the rescue of thousands of Jewish refugees, often called the Sugihara Jews.
Right, but I think even that popular story, the whole Japanese Schindler narrative, it kind of misses half the picture. We're going to dive into how this was even possible. There was this bizarre geopolitical idea called the Fugu Plan that made Japan, of all places, a temporary safe haven. And the amazing part is you can literally walk in the footsteps of this escape today.
It's such a fascinating intersection of history, and to really get it, we have to start not in Japan, but in Lithuania in 1940.
And the sources, I mean, the feeling you get is just pure panic.
Oh, absolute panic. You have Germany invading Poland from the west. The Soviet Union has just annexed Lithuania from the east. So you've got thousands of Jewish refugees, mostly Polish, trapped in the city of Kaunas.
Squeezed between Hitler and Stalin.
The worst possible place to be. They need to get out, but the entire world has basically slammed its doors shut.
Yeah, this is the part that always gets me. We say they couldn't leave.
Yeah.
But why? It wasn't just the Nazis physically blocking them, was it?
No, it was bureaucracy. Cold, hard paperwork. To leave any country back then, you needed an exit visa to get out, and you needed an entry visa for somewhere else.
A destination.
A destination. The Soviets wouldn't let them leave without one. But no one, not the US, not Britain, nobody was handing out entry visas. So they were stuck, completely trapped.
A burning building with no fire exits. Until this tiny crack appeared in the wall.
A loophole. And it comes from a man most people have never heard of, Jan Zwartendijk.
He was the Dutch consul.
Well, sort of. He was the acting Dutch consul. He was actually a businessman for Philips Electronics who just got roped into the job.
Okay.
Some refugees approached him with this desperate idea. They asked for a visa to the Dutch West Indies, specifically the island of Curacao.
But Curacao didn't actually require a visa, right? I read that in the notes.
Technically, no. The local governor had the final say. So Zwartendijk did something brilliant. He stamped their passports, saying that an entry visa for Curacao was not required.
Ah, so he left out the tricky part.
He conveniently left out the, but you still need the governor's permission part. It created a destination on paper. It looked official.
A fake destination. A life-saving fiction.
Exactly. Now, they had a place to go. All they needed was a transit visa to get there. And from Lithuania, the only way to Curacao was east.
Through the Soviet Union, and then through Japan.
Which brings us to Chiuna Sugihara, the Japanese vice consul in Kaunas.
Now, the usual story paints him as this very stoic, quiet hero. But his background was a bit more complicated, wasn't it? He was no simple paper pusher.
Not at all. He was a Russia expert, spoke fluent Russian. In fact, the Soviets had previously kicked him out of the country because they thought he was a spy. He knew the game.
So when these refugees start lining up outside his consulate with passports stamped for Curacao,
he knew immediately what was going on. He knew they weren't planning a Caribbean vacation. He knew they were running for their lives.
but he had a problem. A huge one.
A huge one. Japanese foreign policy was very strict. To get a transit visa, you had to have a valid final destination visa, which the Curacao stamp wasn't, really, and you had to prove you had enough money to travel.
And these refugees had nothing.
They've been stripped of everything. So Sugihara does the proper thing. He cables his bosses in Tokyo. What should I do?
And Tokyo says no.
3 times. They send back explicit instructions. Do not issue visas to anyone who doesn't meet the criteria. Full stop.
This is the moment. I mean, in the culture of 1940s Imperial Japan, defying a direct order from the foreign ministry, that's
Unthinkable. It's career suicide at best. At worst, remember, Japan is moving closer to an alliance with Nazi Germany, helping people the Nazis considered enemies. That could be seen as treason.
But he looks out his window at the crowds.
He sees the families sleeping on the street, waiting at the gate, and he decides to break the rules.
The descriptions from that period, July and August of 1940, are just frantic.
Completely frantic, he starts writing visas by hand, 18, 20 hours a day. His wife, Yukiko, would massage his hands at night because they were so cramped and swollen he could barely hold the pen.
And he wasn't just signing papers, right? He was actually negotiating with the Soviets.
Yes, that's a key detail people miss. The Soviets were charging insane prices for the train tickets, demanding hard currency. Sugihara had to use all his diplomatic skill to make sure the NKVD, the secret police, would actually honor the visas he was writing.
And he kept going, right up until the last possible second.
Literally the last second. When Tokyo finally shut the consulate down and ordered him to leave on the train, he was still writing. He was stamping passports on the train platform.
Throwing them out the window.
Throwing signed blank visas out of the window of the moving train, just hoping they would land in someone's hands.
That's just cinematic. So what's the final tally? How many people?
The official list has just over 2,000 names, but many of those were family visas, covering a husband, wife, children. So the best estimate is that he saved around 6,000 lives.
6,000. Wow. But okay, getting the visa is just step one. Now you have to cross Siberia.
On the Trans-Siberian Railway, today that sounds like a bucket list adventure. Back then, it was a gauntlet of terror. You're on a train for weeks, crossing this frozen wasteland, and you know that at any stop, the secret police could board and just drag you off to a gulag. And sometimes they did.
But most made it.
Most made it to Vladivostok. From there, they boarded these rusty steamers to cross the Sea of Japan to a port called Suruga.
Surga, today they call it the Port of Humanity.
They do. There's a wonderful museum there now. If you ever visit, you can see the actual shoes and diaries and small belongings the refugees arrived with. It's incredibly moving.
Okay, let's pause here, because this is the part of the story that seems so counterintuitive. Japan is an ally of Nazi Germany. They're about to sign the Tripartite Pact. Why didn't they just arrest these Jewish refugees and hand them over to the Germans?
That is the absolute key question, and the answer is one of the strangest ironies of the entire war. It's a bizarre, semi-official policy the Japanese had called the Fugu Plan.
Fugu.
Yeah.
Like the poisonous blowfish.
Exactly like the blowfish. The idea was that the fish is deadly if you prepare it wrong, but delicious if you do it right. The Japanese military leadership had some very strange ideas about Jewish people.
Strange how?
They were anti-Semitic, but in a very particular way. They had read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that infamous forgery that claims Jews secretly control global finance and media.
Wait, they believe that nonsense?
They believe it completely, but unlike the Nazis, their reaction wasn't, we must destroy them. It was, wow, these people are powerful, we should get them on our side.
That is twistedly pragmatic.
It's historical whiplash. They genuinely thought that by being good to these Jewish refugees, they could harness the supposed global Jewish power to, improve Japan's economy and maybe get the Jewish-controlled American government to be friendlier to them.
So the very anti-Semitic propaganda that was used to justify their murder in Europe actually saved them in Japan.
It saved them. So when the refugees land in Suruga, instead of being arrested, the local townspeople come out with food and apples. They're just curious, but fundamentally kind.
And from there, they went to the city of Kobe.
Right. Kobe already had a small Jewish community of traders, so there was some infrastructure, a synagogue.
This is where you get those incredible photos of the Mir Yeshiva, right?
Yeah.
An entire rabbinical school from Poland just transplanted to downtown Kobe.
It's a surreal image. It was the only entire European yeshiva to survive the Holocaust intact. And they just set up shop, studying Torah 18 hours a day. The Japanese neighbors were apparently baffled, wondering why these men were yelling at books all day.
Not realizing that's how you debate the Talmud.
Yeah.
But this sanctuary, it couldn't last. We're now into 1941. The clock is ticking.
It's ticking very, very loudly. The Fugu Plan is falling apart. The U.S. isn't getting any friendlier. War is coming. And the Japanese government starts telling the refugees, you have to move on.
And this is where our ship comes in, the Hikawa Maru.
The Queen of the Pacific. This was not some refugee vessel. This was a stunning Art Deco luxury liner. It sailed the Yokohama to Seattle route. Charlie Chaplin sailed on it.
So for the refugees stepping onto this ship,
it must have been like stepping onto a different planet. After the filth of the Soviet train and the uncertainty of Kobe, to walk into these first-class dining rooms, it was a symbol that they had made it.
But the timing was just unbelievably tight.
Razor thin. The Hikawa Maru made one of his last trips carrying refugees to Seattle in October of 1941.
October, and Pearl Harbor is December 7th.
Less than 2 months. After Pearl Harbor, the Pacific was a war zone. All civilian travel stopped. If Sugihara had waited, if the train was delayed, that door would have slammed shut forever.
What about those who didn't get out in time, who were still in Japan when the war began?
It's a darker story. They were eventually rounded up and sent to the Shanghai ghetto. Conditions were horrific, but, and this is critical, the Japanese repeatedly refused Nazi pressure to exterminate them. They survived.
And the ship itself, the Hikawamaru, it survived too.
It's the only large Japanese passenger liner from that era to survive the war. It served as a hospital ship, hit sea mines 3 times, but it never sank.
Which brings us to today, because you can actually go and touch this piece of history.
You can. The Hikawamaru is now a museum ship, permanently docked in the harbor in Yokohama. It's just a short train ride from Tokyo.
The photos in our sources look like it's a time capsule.
It really is. You can walk the same decks where the refugees stood, watching for the American coastline. It's all there. And for a few dollars, you can step right inside this vessel of salvation.
So let's talk about the travel aspect for a listener who's hearing this and thinking, I want to see this.
Well, it's a very doable trip, and there are even specialized tours now that focus specifically on this Jewish heritage trail in Japan. They can handle the logistics, which can be tricky.
Yeah, things like finding kosher food in Japan must have been tough.
Historically, a nightmare, but that's changing. The sources point out that Tokyo now has a Chabad kosher delivery services. It's much more accessible for an observant traveler.
And what about the other sites? The port, Sugihara's memorial.
They're all accessible. The Port of Humanity Museum in Suruga is a bit out of the way, but you can get there by train. And Sugihara's memorial is in his hometown, up in the mountains of Gifu. It's very beautiful, very serene.
And you'd recommend spring or fall for a trip like this?
Oh, definitely. The summers in Japan are incredibly hot and humid. You want to go in, say, October, November, when the weather is cool and the autumn leaves are spectacular. It fits the reflective mood of a journey like this.
There's also the cemetery in Kobe.
The Foreigner Cemetery, yes.
Correct.
It's on a hillside overlooking the sea. You walk among the graves and you see these stones with Hebrew inscriptions. It really grounds the whole story. These weren't just refugees, they were people.
It's just the sheer chance of it all. If Sugihara hadn't been there, if Zwartendijk hadn't come up with the Curacao trick.
If the Japanese high command hadn't bought into a bizarre conspiracy theory, none of it happens. Thousands of families that exist today would simply not be here.
Whatever happened to Sugihara?
For a long time, nothing good. The Japanese Foreign Service essentially fired him for insubordination. He lived in obscurity for decades. It wasn't until 1985, a year before he died, that Yad Vashem in Israel honored him as righteous among the nations.
So he died largely unrecognized in his own country.
He did, but he knew what he'd done. There's a famous quote from him where he said, "I may have disobeyed my government, but if I hadn't, I would have been disobeying God."
That says it all, really.
It does. It shows the power of one person's conscience.
Before we go, I want to come back to the Hikawamaru one last time.
Sure.
The fact that it survived the war as a hospital ship. There's a symbolism there that's just perfect.
It's very fitting. A vessel of life in an ocean of death. And today it just sits there in Yokohama Harbor. People jog past it every day.
And most of them probably have no idea that they're jogging past Japan's Noah's Ark. So here's the thought I want to leave you with. Next time you're on vacation, standing in front of some tourist attraction, a monument, an old building, a ship in a harbor, take a second. Scratch beneath the surface. Because almost every place has these hidden layers of history, these incredible stories of survival and humanity hiding in plain sight.
You just have to know where to look.
Precisely. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.